Want to achieve network marketing success? Then you're in the right company. Hello, and welcome to Leave Nothing to Chance, hosted by networking marketing giant, John Solleder. Learn everything you need to know about the network marketing space from somebody who's actually done it. Join us every week for front row seats as we feature some of the finest and most successful personalities in network marketing. Leave nothing to chance. Join us now.
Well, it is a distinct opportunity to interview a very long-term friend in the industry, Mr. Robert Arthur. Robert, how are you today?
Excellent. Thank you, John. It's good to be here.
How many years now are you in the industry?
Going on 26.
26. Wow. And I know you've had a tremendous run the last number of years. So congratulations. It's a great industry when it all works right, isn't it?
It is when it works right, and it normally works right when we work it.
That is for sure. So I know you've been exposed now to the latest book, Leaving Nothing to Chance, and I know there's a few principles in there that you really liked, but you want to pick one and talk about why you liked it and what it means to you.
Yeah, I would love to. One of my favorite ones or principles was commit or risk giving up too soon. That really struck a chord with me because time and time again, if you're in this industry long enough, you realize that we have to embrace the law of the harvest and the law of sowing and reaping. And if for anything worthwhile in life, there's always typically the crucible, and it refines us into who we can be and what we can achieve with any business endeavor. And until we commit, one of my favorite quotes, until we commit, there's a hesitancy to draw back, and then all manner of unforeseen magic and just the beauty of it all comes into place. I'm paraphrasing it, but that's where the magic is, John, is when we commit with our heart, with our spirit, with our time, with our passion. And that's when we can really build something that's lasting and worthwhile.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let me ask you this. I know you've been a student of self-development for as long as we know each other, and maybe even longer than that, certainly. What was the first book, if you can think back, a young Robert Arthur, what was the first book that somebody handed you, or you tripped over it, or you found it in the library, maybe were you in school, or where was it and what was it?
Jeff's book.
Okay.
The Slide Edge. Yeah, it introduced me to so many principles that we're just not taught. The principle of leverage and, the principle of what we just covered, some of these basic universal laws and principles. And obviously, he has a deep passion for our profession of network marketing and that the whole concept of leverage and residual income, even multiple streams. And then in that one little improvement, that extra phone call, that extra next step, that extra whatever it is that we take can make all the difference, can open up all the doors. And then over time, how those small little steps over time can move mountains, can move the earth. So.
Sure can. So let's say today that you have an opportunity. So I hate to ever say people are stranded on a deserted island, but if you think back when we were the kids to Gilligan's Island, right, which some of our younger viewers never saw that show, but you wind up for whatever reason on a deserted island, okay, a beautiful deserted island, plenty of food, plenty of water, plenty of sustenance. But they say, listen, you're limited on what you can bring, Robert. You can only bring 3 books with you. What are they?
Well, one of my books is one of my favorite, we all have mentors, role models in life. And one of my mentors is Andy Andrews. And he's a faith-based leader, author, speaker. Even at one point, he was a comedian. One of his books is called The Traveler's Gift. Mm. And The Traveler's Gift is based on the principle of this character who was given the opportunity to travel to different places in time. It's more of a fantasy, but it's also based on real life, timeless principles, even biblical principles. And the point is, David Ponder, he's taken to these iconic figures and times in our history as humans on this planet, from Abe Lincoln to Napoleon to Columbus, and the cool part is he gets to see them as the real people, and he also gets to see why they played such pivotal roles, because of their character, because of the decisions that they had to make, not always easy decisions. And so the Traveler's Gift, to me, it would be a reminder of what the pursuit of excellence looks like. It would be a reminder for me if I was stranded on that island and I could see these beautiful examples of what it means to be kind of the best version of the human, if you will, or servant leader that God made us to be, And so that would be one of the books, that would be The Traveler's Gift by Andy Andrews.
Okay. And are there, in addition to your Bible, of course, I always say that, and I forgot to say that today. So you get your Bible and you get 3 books. So that's the first one by Andy Andrews, and there's got to be 2 more, I would think.
Yeah, there's many I could list here, but one of my other mentors, again, faith-based mentor, he's Brian Clemmer. Brian passed away recently, and Brian wrote a number of books and different workshops and programs. One of his books, which I love, is called The Compassionate Samurai. And what that book reminds me of when I read it is it's the antithesis. All of us have this energy of healing and giving, and all of us have the energy of the warrior and that aggressive individual who gets things done. But then we also, so it's the balance of what it means to live a life more in balance, and to also be okay and give ourselves permission to be that humble individual who humbly serves other people and puts that ego aside. And we're always mindful that ego edging God out. Let's don't go there. Let's keep him there, but keep the reason why we're here. And in place. We can be that soft servant where we're there and we're always asking, we're listening, we're empathetic, and we're kind, full of grace, full of love. And that's always balanced by the firm, disciplined warrior who's ready to fight for what we know is right and just. And so that book is, every chapter in that book would remind me that of the balance of life, and what that, often it's a struggle, often it's more of an ease, the ebb and flow of life as well. So there's some timeless lessons in that book.
Is there a third one?
Yeah, there was a number. To be honest, I was looking through my library and I was saying, okay, if I had just 3 books, including the good book, I would have to say transparently that my third one would be more entertainment. Okay. It would be light. It would be, I would go on a grand adventure. I pulled one of my, I'm an avid fan of like Clive Cussler. It's always the hero and the heroine. He saves the planet. So I guess, again, I wanted to come to this interview and just be transparent about it. My third book would be more entertaining, and probably one of my Cussler books where he saves the planet.
Okay. we could use some of that now, right? After the last crazy year, which is a perfect segue, Robert, to my next question. So, you've been doing this a long time, and over 2 decades, and we've just gone through, and I don't know if we're completely through it yet as we post this interview, but we're getting past it, I think, as a world, the pandemic, but we're still not completely past it. That being the case, there's so many people. Let me kind of give you a description here. I'm interested in your answer on this. So let's say there's a father and son. Okay, you got a 60-year-old dad, you got a 25-year-old son of that dad. And let's describe them for a minute. Let's say dad's been in maybe senior level management with a company for a number of years, done really well. save some money for retirement. Everything's looking good the last, up until the last little bit of time here. And all of a sudden, the economy just does what it's done. And maybe now he's even returning to work on a full-time basis, but income's not going to be the same. Company works for, sales are not going to be the same. Revenue's not going to be the same. Therefore, dad's not going to make what dad was used to make. And then he's getting up in years. He's getting to that point of, hey, want to put my feet up and hit some more golf balls or do whatever. And he says, those network marketing things, boy, they've been around a long time. And I've never really looked at one, never really needed to. And his 25-year-old son, who maybe is well educated, went to a good school, did all the work, same situation, maybe started his career, had the wind sucked out of it because of the pandemic. And maybe the kid is now living at home and dad's looking at him and saying, wow, you've got an education. What are you going to do with your life? And he's looking at dad and saying, hey, dad, what are you going to do with the balance of your life? And they're both having a struggle. And all of a sudden, the kid says the same thing dad says. He says, those network marketing things, I've heard of them. And you know what? We know Robert. Let's go over to his office and pick his brain. So those two guys walk in there this afternoon, beautiful summer day. And they say, Robert, tell us why network marketing now as opposed to prior to the pandemic. What would your answer be?
Well, a part of my answer is I would recognize the fact that it takes some courage to buck status quo. And I would say, first of all, thanks for both of you for stepping up and asking is there something different that would be more fulfilling and, maybe even bring us more time together as a father and son. And is there something that would bring us a deeper sense of purpose? I would, maybe what I just shared seems to be, okay, Robert, you're jumping right into the deep part of it way too early. Sure, I would, get to know them first, connect with them as human beings, figure out kind of what some of the things that brings them joy, some of the things that they want to do more of in life. And that would be one of my segues. I would simply ask, one of the questions I would ask the father is, are there some chapters of your book that you've been writing for 60 years that are unwritten? That maybe there's a couple things you shared with your son right here. And by the way, I also want to applaud you. Your son, it's pretty instantly apparent to me that your son trusts you and looks up to you. Otherwise, he wouldn't be sitting here with you. And it's also pretty apparent to me that you as a father are a listener and you care about your son's future and you're willing to spend time with him. Otherwise, you wouldn't be sitting here either. And so I would ask the father, so is there, if right now, if I wrote you a check for $1 million and you had to spend it only doing some things that you could do with your family and loved ones that you've thought about doing, that you kind of put off for maybe several, even decades now, what would you be doing? And listen, and then ask I train on this all the time. Ask the questions. I train on, it's on my wall right now. It says, okay, tell me more and be genuinely interested. And then my other question, I always ask the question, so when you're doing that activity, how would you feel? How would that make you feel to do that activity, even with your son, with your wife, with your grandkids? And then listen, and which also entails pausing. So I would be drawn to visiting what I call more of the legacy questions. What are some things you left undone? And then you tie it into the adventure. So for both the 60-year-old gentleman and the 25-year-old son, one of the core human needs and desires is tied to adventure and new experiences to grow. And I would ask them, what does that look like? If you were, even you two right now, if you're going on an adventure together, money wasn't an issue, neither was time, what would that look like? So I would, first of all, I'd spend a little time dreaming and visioning and vision casting with them. And then I would also ask the father, so let me ask you a question. Let's say we live to a ripe old age of even 100, 40 years from today. That's 40 more additional years. And at the end of that time, what would you like your son's kids, possibly your son's kids' kids, to be saying about you? What does that sound like? What does that look like? For example, what's the legacy you want to leave? And then to the 25-year-old, I would have kind of switched gears for a moment and said, what if you could put some of the old farts to shame and and step into a place where and be your own boss and create something that has your thumbprint. And because you're 25, you're full of imagination, passion, purpose. I see you're lighting up as we talk about these. See with your dad, how does that feel like to you? What do you really want to accomplish? What do you want to step into? What does that look like? How's that going to feel like? When I say that you could actually create a business that can make a lasting impact on even your friends around you and even your parents and some of your peers, and even possibly even a global impact, what does that feel like? What does that look like? I would love to hear more about that. I'm sure your dad would too. So again, that's would be part of the conversation I would have with these, the father and son.
Great answer. And I love that you get them kind of dreaming about the future and thinking about it together and separately, and what their needs are at those different, vastly different ages as well. So perfect way for me to ask you this question. You've been doing this a long time. You've started a lot of people in the industry successfully. Some that have become really successful, some have become modestly successful, and some that, as we both know, some just don't work out for whatever reason, right? But what do you do today in terms of guidance to, help that 60-year-old dad or 25-year-old, youngster get started and get off to a flying start? So they see some success, they gain some personal confidence, they gain some confidence in your company, in the organization, and in the industry, whatever it is that they need to gain. What methodology have you used, or what do you see anyway that's working today with all the experience that you have?
Well, would you like an answer from a more mechanical, some of the tools I would use, or more of a kind of a big picture?
Yeah, both would be fine.
A little bit of both. Well, yeah, great question, John. First, two things: the method and the way that we communicate, the medium we communicate has changed. What really hasn't changed is the basic core human needs and some of the challenges, some of the inner dialogue that goes on. So one of the first things I would do is, as I said earlier, even the father and the son, I would have a discovery question. And first of all, discover, is there a disparity between the vision I have, then I perceive them that they might have, and that they actually have. The analogy, I'm sure you've taught this before many times, is that I could be in a Lamborghini going, 180 miles an hour in my business. And then over here, my new rep that I just brought on board, maybe they envision their business as more of a Volkswagen, a Beetle that they have just remade, and it barely gets down the road. And if I address them and say, here's the business, 180 mile an hour business, and without even pausing long enough and figuring out what they desire, because John, and here's the deal, if you're listening to this call too, hopefully you can grasp this, is that how many times, again, I've heard so many top leaders, and even the ones that are, making the gangster money, if you will, whatever you want to call it, and especially the ones that are serving at this high level of contribution, which compels me, is so much of the time they said, well, when I started with this, I simply wanted to get my darn car note paid, or I simply wanted to pay my college loan, on a monthly basis. And so many of the very top leaders, they didn't see the 180-mile Lamborghini at all. They simply wanted $200, $300, $400 a month. And so fortunately for many of them, they had a coach or mentor or business partner who did take the time to connect with them, discover where they were at, and meet them where they were. From an expectation level, from a goal setting level. Otherwise, I'm setting up guilt, I'm setting up remorse, I'm setting up anger, I'm setting up all kinds of the negative, darker stuff, where I could be instead affirming them and uplifting them and celebrating every little milestone that they hit. So I know I'm getting a little more esoteric, but I think it's crucial that we meet people where they're at. So much of the time we have these, you wouldn't be on this call if you didn't have, high ambitions and some great high goals. That's great. So do I, so do John. We always have for many years. All I'm saying is that meet them where they're at, get to slow down long enough to listen and figure out where they are, and then adjust our coaching, mentoring, and even the way we celebrate the milestones with them. And the other thing that we always strive to impart to our newbies is that is remind them that it's about being ready, firing, and then aiming. Or another way of saying it is that okay, let's decide that we're going to move forward, and then let's do the do, and then we'll figure it out as we go. And one of the analysis paralysis is a real disease, and so much of the time it's all tied to our imposter syndrome. The imposter syndrome is alive and well, and I haven't met an individual yet, even the ones that write the books and are on the stages and have the stories. Do they still have their imposter? Yes. Their imposter conversations could be 2 seconds now or 5 seconds versus 5 days when they started. So anyway, that's the other caveat is for our newbies is to show them the mechanics. Obviously, we want to show them how do we connect. I'm sure you've heard some. I love doing some of the rejection-free ways to invite and empower them, give them the tools and the resources to when they can start connecting and inviting, using the tools, plugging in. We obviously go through the mechanics with individuals, but the mechanics won't mount to a hill of beans unless they're in an environment. Remember, environment is 1,000 times more powerful than willpower and grit.
Great.
If we don't help them set up a positive reinforcing environment of some type and some level, they're going to be sabotaged by who knows who, could be their closest relative in a week, or the next dream killer down the road who's their cousin who's a wannabe success story. And anyway, so that's the other part of this, help them set up that environment of support, help them plug into the community. And then obviously we always teach mechanics, but mindset is a huge part of it too. So.
Well, and I love the answers to these questions and that's so true, is sometimes, we want to sell them on our life after, your case and my case. I mean, together we've been doing this. I'm 38, you're 26. So, 64 years. And I've interviewed some guys that have been doing it for over 50 years. And, it's like the way we see the business is, hey, this is our profession. We've been doing it forever. But that new guy, whether it's the 60-year-old, the 25-year-old, the 18-year-old, the 70-year-old, they may just get in here and say, I've never had a decent car. I've had a used car my whole life. I'd love to be able to make an extra, $300 a month just to have a decent car, to drive. Or maybe I've never really been on a vacation. I'd love to spend a little time going to wherever, some local resort, maybe. I mean, it's not even something that you or I would get excited about necessarily, but to them, that's where they're at. And meeting them where they're at, that's so key. What you said is that you meet them where they're at, so you don't oversell that expectation. You sell them on what it is that they're looking for. And I know myself, Robert, let me ask you this. I know in my case, when I started, I was in college. So, I wanted to, I'm not shy about this. I wanted to make beer money. It was like, I had no beer money ever. I was a poor kid, you know what I mean? And I was going to school and I was working part-time, and it was like, Friday night would come and, I'd like have no money to ever go out with my friends, and that's where I started. And, here I am. This became a career from a simple idea like that. When you started, do you remember what the first thing was that you wanted?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. When I started my first serious business, I actually, my car had just been totaled out. My girlfriend borrowed it, went up to the ski resort there and overheated the engine block. And I was going to school, broke student, more month than money. And I actually gave my sponsor a pair of skis and my bow and arrows. I was in ski archery, Nordic skiing and archery, if you remember.
Yeah,
and was competing with that even internationally. And I didn't have the money. I had the work ethic and the drive. So my sponsor saw that in me. And so what I got to work and, sold about $2,500 worth of initial product in 2.5 weeks without a dime to invest in the business, simply because I had the gumption. But what I really wanted, even back then, a way to fund adventure, to be honest. I wanted to see the world and see the planet, experience all these beautiful people. My dad was an armchair traveler. He had every National Geographic you could ever buy. And we went on family vacations to the mountains, Colorado. And so, but it was always this bigger, I never saw life it's just one little trip or whatever. I saw my experiences here as I'm here to experience the planet and all these beautiful cultures and people. And when I was introduced to network marketing, I said, wow, you mean I could do A and that would lead to B, and then I would attract C, D, E, F, G, and these people, and I would get a few bucks from them, which could be more. And I see this guy on stage. I know as much as he does, and he's earning this kind of money. And then and that you and I were together years ago, and I saw this guy clean shaven and a little ruffled, but he got up there and he was real and he was very passionate. And I said, wow, he knows a few things, but then again, I have just as much work ethic as he does, and I have the people skills. And so, yeah, initially for me, it was, I simply wanted to be able to live life on my terms and really just see more of this beautiful planet to be. And that was my driver, if you will.
And it's funny because over the course of time, so many of us get the travel bug once we start making some money and realize in many cases we have an international business. So, hey, go build a downline in the country you want to go to. What better way to see it and get paid to do it? But let me ask you this, Robert, because you've always been a very goal-oriented person. And I know you were an elite athlete younger in life, and you've been an elite distributor. How do you set goals?
My version of goal setting is tied to daily activity. I'm not necessarily driven by the trips, by the competition, by seeing my name on the next top recruiter board. I am driven more by one of the things that drives me, which is tied to my goal setting, is I love at the end of each day to feel like I did something worthy. And again, this is tied to it's part of the stuff I'm still working on, being worthy. Anybody relate to that? We won't go into psychology right now, or the way my brain works. That'd be a scary place to go. But anyway, so my version of goal setting that has enabled me to accomplish some significant milestones in life, business, sport, even in my marriage, is fortunately, I had the grit to be consistent in my daily activity. I was on another call. Hopefully we're always doing these kind of calls and stuff with another mentor 2 weeks ago. And he asked the crew on the webinar, the crowd, he said, guys, what do you think is one of the most under talked about, under recognized skills in our industry of network marketing? And we all were putting in the chat different things, people skills and recruiting and inviting. And at the end of the the chat, he said, here it is. It begins with a C. It's consistency. When we can consistently show up and consistently set these daily little gauges or milestones, then that's what leads to the bigger goals and the bigger trips. Don't get me wrong, guys. Do I have my next rank in the wall on red ink? Yes. Do I every significant financial goal that I've hit in every company I've been in, has it been on the wall in red ink? Heck yeah. Okay. So I have the written goals, but the driver to me and really the heart of all my success, different milestones, as I mentioned, were consistently showing up on a daily basis and hitting and being okay with doing the do to hit those little daily goals. So that's what leads to the massive, larger BHAGs, the big, hairy, audacious ones, the big, hairy, audacious goals. So
I met Jim Collins a few years ago here in Dallas. And that was the first time I ever heard big, hairy, audacious goal. And I have adopted that in my training classes. And
BHAG, yeah.
A BHAG, it's like, boy, you got to have that big, hairy, audacious goal. I love it. But that's great advice. So Robert, in wrapping up today, okay, you've been at this now 26 years. You've been extremely successful. I know you have a new venture, and we never talk about companies and all of that, but good luck with that. But let me ask you this: looking forward, where are you going now?
I am committed to becoming more effective in how I lead, inspire, guide, and mentor others. The end result of that will be I will create a stronger, unshakable legacy for my grandkids and people that know me through this chapter anyway, this existence, and doing that. My goal is to create a legacy that this gentleman, this man truly was a servant leader. This man truly was all about, he truly had a desire each and every day to uplift others around him. So the monetary goals, the vision, building the next biggest million people team, sure, if it happens, it happens. That's inevitable when I decide to keep growing and developing my own self. That's where I'm going.
Great. Well, very, very well said. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today, Robert. It's been a pleasure, and continued great success, continued good health, obviously, and really appreciate it. And great comments, great leadership. And folks, when you listen to Robert is somebody who has figured it out, created a lifestyle for himself. And there's so many people out there that's what you want to do, is pick your path, pick your company, pick your opportunity, and go with it. My name is John Solleder, and I'm the host of Leaving Nothing to Chance. You probably figured that out if you're listening to the show. We're on every Tuesday, 52 weeks a year, including Christmas. Our books are called Leave Nothing to Chance. Is on Amazon.com, and also Moving Up 2020, both Amazon bestsellers. You can get them from Amazon, and they're digital, and they're also available in Spanish if you have a Spanish team. We work with a lot of Spanish people in lots and lots of different countries around the world. So once again, Robert, I want to thank you again, and I'm going to give you the last word to sign us out today.
Mm-hmm. Well, people are praying for an answer for whatever your product or service, whatever the solution you provide to people. Just know there's a whole lot of people praying for that solution. Let's have the courage to step up and invite them to take a look and be the leader that you were created to be. Thank you, John, for all you do. Thanks for your heart of service. Thanks, everybody, for showing up today and growing.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Leave Nothing to Chance. If you want to know more about what it takes to succeed in the network marketing space, join us again next week for another amazing episode. For additional resources and to connect with John Solleder, visit leavingnothingtochance.com. Don't forget to leave a review, and we'll see you next time.